I'm David Clayton, and this is the Way of Beauty podcast, conversations on Catholic faith and culture. Hello, I'm here with Caleb Brown. Hello, Caleb.
Hey, David, good to see you.
Great to see you. Caleb is a good friend of mine, and he is a screenplay writer and script doctor, and we'll get into exactly what that means later. But I'm talking to him because he is the screenplay writer for a full-length feature which has just been released called Blue Ridge. And I watched it last night, and it's excellent, Caleb. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Just a really great film, and we watched it here at St. Jerome's Convent and thoroughly enjoyed it. So we'll come back to that in a second. Some people will know Caleb's name because he's on the faculty of Pontifex University and has created a great course as part of the Master of Sacred Arts program called Christian Humanism in Modern Cinema. So I'm hoping that people will think about looking at that as well. So first of all, Caleb, welcome. Great to have you here. Congratulations on this terrific film, I have to say. It's beautiful. It's set in the Appalachians. Just that alone makes it worthwhile. And but why don't you tell us first a little bit about the film and the project? I don't want to go too much into it. I want people to watch it and discover the plot and everything. But tell us what you feel is appropriate at this stage. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll explore a little bit your story in screenplay writing, which I think is fascinating, and also your view on how your Christian faith and the culture should play out in a popular culture for the good of all, really. So tell us about the film, Blue Ridge, first of all.
So Imagicom Films and their network, INSP, approached me with this idea, and they were like, hey, we want something that is like Walker, Texas Ranger, but more contemporary, up-to-date, and set in Appalachia. And so I'd never seen Walker, Texas Ranger. It's not really my genre, but what I do like is learning about other cultures and sort of their culture, their values, and things that feel foreign but interesting. And so, yeah, I took the project and came up with the plot. And the plot of Blue Ridge is a former Green Beret from California moves to a small Appalachian town to be close to his ex-wife and daughter. He thinks he's coming into a semi-retirement, that he's going to get caught in the long-standing family feud that will interrupt his plans. The company was planning to make this a test to see if it'll become like a continuing series like Walker, Texas Ranger. And we will see. So a lot of it depends on audience response. It should premiere on the network sometime. But in the meantime, streaming is the new theatrical release, apparently. So it's available on voodoo.com.
Yes. I will just give you my impressions. First of all, really enjoyed it. I know you're a Christian, and I know you've got views on how that informs the culture. So I was looking to see, and what I would say is that it's just what I was hoping for. Nothing explicitly Christian in it at all. And pretty hard hitting in terms of the shall we say there's a murder taking place, and it doesn't shy away from the sort of things that can give rise to a murder and the conflicts in this town. But through this, there is a resolution that is just, I think. I would say, I don't think that's giving too much away, but nevertheless believable in this context. So it's not sappy. There's a warmth to it at the end of it. Also, the way you treat, there's romantic tension within it, which I thought was very nicely done. So nothing inappropriate from the Christian point of view, but again, dealing with it in a realistic way, in a charming way, I would have said. But actually much more realistic in people's real lives than what you normally see in these sort of theories, certainly in my life anyway. And if I was to characterize it, I would say it was a little like, is it Longmire, the one of the sheriff in this town?
I did, yeah, that was part of my research, and that was that we talked about Longmire a lot, and yeah, so this it kind of ended up being Longmire but less bleak.
Exactly, yeah, it's warmer. There's greater warmth.
Yeah,
it is
dealing with. Yeah, and I need to give credit where it's due. Is I wasn't the only author on this. I did the first pass, and then somebody in the company who polishes all their scripts, Shay Sizemore. He's really got a great feel. He's from Appalachia. He included a lot of great details, and yeah, he's chiefly responsible for the kind of the warm family stuff. I came up with the intricate plot.
Well, that's your speciality. I would say also that that's what's noticeable. I don't know what it's like it's set in Georgia, is it? Something like that.
It's set in North Carolina, but shot in northern Georgia. Clayton, Georgia.
A town called Clayton. I know.
That's right. Yeah.
But the detailed observation made it convincing, I would say. So that's that.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, detailed observation is like that's why. Yeah, that's what sets good movies apart from just kind of like exercises and replicating a genre formula.
Yeah, that was very good, and also beautiful. I mean, not really. You got a feeling for what it's like there.
Yeah, I'd never been to Appalachia before, and this was compulsory research. I went out there, I drove around Blue Ridge Parkway. It was the fall. It made a strong impression on me, and I went to a small bookstore and got. This is kind of a trick that I've learned is that if you really want to kind of get a feel for the area, find the local authors, not people who are going through the big presses like they're in New York and LA. Like find something that's kind of self-published and you get a really authentic sense of what people care about and what they think about themselves. And so, yeah. Appalachia is, I learned a lot about it. It's an interesting part of the country, like known for sort of a strong independence, lots of high value on family, high distrust of people coming in trying to change things, and so this is sort of where the detective is already off on the wrong foot. He's from California. He's got family reasons to be there, which is kind of why people put up with him. But yeah, he's an outsider who's gonna bump up against some very inhospitable forces in the town. And it's not really until the last couple scenes that you get some sort of relief from that. That's the design anyhow.
No, it works, I think. The other points I would make is that we were watching it in the house, and Maria, who lives here, she enjoyed it and loved it. And the comment she made was there's very strong female characters in this.
Oh, very good. Yeah.
Really enjoyed. Yeah. And I'd say good characterization again, that there's something believable about them. There's a warmth to everybody, which is naturally human, I would say. And it
was absolutely what I encountered on my visits. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah, okay. Even if they're not doing great things, the general, the general sense of this is good, and but without shirking away from the fact that the plot is about a murder and there's evil in this town as well. But so very good. All right, we'll come back to that again. For those who are just champing at the bit and want to go away and watch it, I would encourage you to do so. It's at voodoo.com, which I think is the Walmart streaming site. And if you just put in Blue Ridge, it will come up. And it cost us $2.99 to watch it last night, so it's well worth it. Okay, Caleb, I now want to just talk to you about how you ended up doing this. You're a screenplay writer for a full-length feature, great film. Just tell us the story, and I know that your faith plays a big part in that. So include references to that and how the development of your career and your faith go hand in hand.
I moved to LA in 2005 on the wake of the Passion of the Christ. That was kind of a lightning rod moment for a lot of people my age who wanted to, make a difference with films that intersected with Christian faith. And the passion was like, well, what it was. So there were a whole bunch of us that moved to LA. They were like, more of that, please. It's been really hard to replicate. It's taken me 15 years of writing and consulting to get the chance to write something that actually got made. And it's, I can only accredit it to stubbornness and friends. That was what resulted in a successful outcome so far. There were a lot of times where I thought, it's just not going to work out. And I had some great moments of good fortune. I cite as one moment, like learning from this USC adjunct professor named Bob Buster how to analyze stories at a real professional level.
I'm just going to stop you a moment. So with just a little bit of background, you moved from Texas.
Yeah, I'm from West Texas, Midland, Texas.
Right, and you are a Protestant Christian.
I grew up Southern Baptist home.
Okay.
My journey went from Southern Baptist to kind of very Pentecostal throughout college. And it wasn't until LA, I joined a Presbyterian church, but the pastor there invited me on a retreat to a monastery just north of LA in Vallejo with some Benedictine monks. And that just really got in my blood, that experience. At the time, I was reading a lot of Catholic authors, and in my mind, in my experience, there was like, there's some really good Protestant authors, but all the best Catholic authors were kind of like here. And so the depth, you talk about a foreign culture that is exciting and interesting. Like, the Catholic intellectual world was pretty bottomless. And so LA is where I sort of got in touch with that for the first time.
Right. Okay.
And so, I got interested in movies because I would make movies from all my high school projects with my friends. It was like our favorite thing to do together. And gradually got decent enough at it to, that I thought, no, maybe I should make a go at it in LA. And the Passion of the Christ was kind of the tipping point where it's like, all right, I can't make a difference in West Texas. A fact that is actually changing these days, I think. Mm-hmm. Like the need to make it in LA or New York in order to have a voice like this is no longer true. I wrote most of this script while I was in New Jersey on a sabbatical with my wife. So anyhow, that's a side concern. So I moved to LA, mostly, waiting tables and a lot of phones and just kind of made relationships, going bowling and gradually these people that I would hang out with, would have opportunities for me. So my first real job was at the TV Guide Network, writing for a show called Close Up. It was like a poor man's E! True Hollywood story, which is pretty poor. But it was really neat to listen. My job was to transcribe interviews from all these celebrities, directors and writers and actors. It was a pretty good education. I got an internship at Warner Brothers through the Act One program, which was a great.
Let's just mention that. So Act One was an attempt. I'm not sure if is it still going?
We're going. Yeah.
Okay. So let's mention that Act One is a screenplay writing school that is aimed at Christians who want to get into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to get out of explicitly Christian films, not that anyone's against that, but to understand how we can get into the mainstream culture as Christians with a Christian voice that is authentic and real and hard-hitting. Is that fair?
That is, that's exactly right. Like almost straight out of Barbara Nicolosi's mouth, the founder.
Yeah.
So while I was at Warner Brothers, I would read 3 scripts a day from supposedly the best writers in the country. And they're all good writers, but still only like 2%, 5% of the scripts that you'd read would be any good. I'd read these scripts and I'd go home at night and I would find myself reading Aquinas on ethics or something like that. And so here I was where I thought I wanted to be in development, an intern in the development office of like a major producer. He's even more major now. Dan Lin, he did the Lego movie, and most recently he did Two Popes, actually. And before that, Aladdin, the Disney remake of Aladdin. So he's been doing great. But while I was there, I just started to get the sense that like, maybe I'm interested in something deeper. So I started teaching this class after hours called How to Watch a Movie. And it kind of synthesized things from all my reading in anthropology and linguistics and theology and philosophy, and just kind of turned all these tools towards dissecting films. And so, yeah, at the Warner Brothers office over pizza and beer, anybody who wanted to would come in and we watch, say, like Good Will Hunting, and just very slowly go through it and ask ourselves, or what are we feeling and why are we feeling it? And we reverse engineer the director's decisions that way. And it's an amazing a pedagogical process. Like you can make yourself a filmmaker. That's all you need. Is like a good library, good taste, and the ability to think critically about how these effects are being achieved through the filmic medium.
Tell me a little bit more about what that phrase means. Reverse engineering the decisions. Yeah.
I mean, like films are like these $1 million works of art with like lots of people involved. Like there are people gathered around a monitor watching a film come together, and they're asking each other, is like, all right, what do we want the audience to be feeling at this moment? And all right, how do we make that happen? And yeah, you communicate that through the lighting, through the casting, through the pace and the dialogue. And so it's not an accident. Like everything you're feeling in a movie is pretty meticulously designed. So if you can nail like, all right, what am I feeling? And then you start looking underneath, like how did they achieve that? Like, was it something I heard? Was it something I saw? Is it the color palette? Is it the tone of voice of this actor? Like, was there a gesture that happened that really, got to me? In this way, like studying films, studying how you watch films isn't just a way to understand movies and train yourself how to make them. Like it also kind of makes you a wiser person, like way more observant. I did do a how to watch a movie presentation in Vladivostok once. And this person at the end said, you shouldn't call this class how to watch a movie. You should just call it how to pay better attention in life. And I thought that was a really good title.
Yeah.
And why I continue to enjoy doing those talks.
Okay. I'm just going to come in here and say that, first of all, if anybody gets a chance to hear Caleb or talk about movies or attend one of his talks, I would encourage you to do that. It's absolutely fascinating, the things he brings out. Also, we're going to post in this podcast, the show notes that go with it, a couple of shorts that you made. You call them shortcuts, is that right?
Yeah, that's the right.
Which are 5 minutes maybe. I mean, but they're little documentaries, one about Breaking Bad and one about The Incredibles, which I'll post separately as well, because I want people to see these. I saw the Breaking Bad one when we first met here in Berkeley, California, and how you ended up here, of course, is the next stage of your story, which we'll come back to. But I thought this was terrific. I'd never seen anybody explain the visual elements. I'd kind of been aware that there are filters used on cameras, but you described the color content and the color coordination in the directing of Breaking Bad in those opening scenes in the first episode, and how psychologically this is trying to communicate something. And first of all, it was extremely interesting. It opened up things that I'd never thought about in films. So I'll bear out what that person said. Suddenly you're looking at things in a different way. But also, the reason I was excited about this is that I would say that Breaking Bad is brilliantly crafted, even better now, I believe now, than I realized before I watched your instruction on it. but it's not good ethically. I mean, there's no redemption at the end of it, and I couldn't watch it eventually. I found it so dark. But we have to look at the power of those movies and those series, those TV series, to understand why are they popular. And you were explaining that. And I thought, finally, there's a chance here that we can get some good, powerful move. We can use this for the good, what you're just describing. So I want people to go and look at those shortcuts that we're going to post as well. And then say also, that's why I asked you to teach this class at Pontifex University, because we talked about the things that I just referred to, and I realized that you have a vision which is in harmony with what I've been talking about in art and to a lesser degree architecture and music. You were talking about in film, which is
logos and cinema. Yeah, it's there.
It's all commercial. It doesn't work unless it's you can't. You've got to get people to watch the thing, but it's the most powerful. So that's there's the advert for shortcuts. Okay, so let's go back now to LA. You're reading Aquinas at night and giving talks during the day at Warner Brothers.
Okay. And so I got the idea that, I love teaching this class. I love teaching this class more than any of the writing or producing short films that I'd done up to that point. And so I decided I was going to go to grad school and just wanted to get better at this kind of analysis work. And yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd ever work in the film industry again. I just wanted to get some knowledge, and the kind of my gateway drug and my continuing sort of primary hero in this area is Marshall McLuhan. And Marshall McLuhan didn't have a lot to say about the content of movies because he was way more interested in delivery mechanisms. But his whole theory of media and language, I got a really great education, and I'm really grateful to the Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology. So I knew I was interested in McLuhan and sort of media analysis. I was trying to find who's doing that now. Because if you want to do media studies at any sort of like university, you're just going to get like a baptism by fire and Gramsci and like all this sort of post-colonial thought.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to stop you there. A bit of explanation. So Marshall McLuhan is Catholic.
Yeah.
He was at Stanford. Is that right?
No, he was at University of Toronto.
Okay.
And Fordham before that, but he was educated in Cambridge. Anyhow.
Okay. So right. Okay. So you're reading him now. Then Gramsci, this figure you mentioned, he is, but very hardly known at all, but actually highly influential on the culture today. I would say an Italian communist who died in the 30s, who had all these theories of culture and pretty much responsible for modern things like critical theory, and has shaped the way that culture is discussed in our modern mainstream universities by developing a sort of extending Marxist thought, effectively, that was just grabbed by the intellectuals. And so I'd seen this in art. You're saying that you were telling me the other day that you did a literature degree. Was it your first degree? And
I did an English degree. And one reason I went into English was because my communications program at Trinity University, and pretty much any university, was a communications degree is just all about like, here's how you understand media through hegemony and through the imbalance of power between these groups. And what I will say about Gramsci is that there's got to be there is an explanation for the length of his influence, and here's where it intersects with my film studies. Like, you don't have an impact without getting something right.
Yep.
So what he got right, in my opinion, was all right, century of Marxist thought before him, or not quite. And like everybody was focused on economics and the means of production.
Yep.
Nobody was talking about cultural stuff. In fact, like you'd show how great of a Marxist you were by like not caring about culture, because that's just like kind of a sideshow. Like economics drives culture.
Okay.
He sort of flipped that on its head. And he was like, you know why Marxism isn't succeeding in these democratic liberal societies? Well, because, we can talk about the economic models till we're blue in the face. Like their culture is like liberal and democratic and Western. And so we can't make any progress unless we start sort of taking aim at these cultural symbols. And we need to promote our own. And that's how we get our influence.
Yeah, and so that's echoed by people even at the other end of the political scale. I would say not as extreme as Grabsky was on the left, but people like Andrew Breitbart, for example, would say that the culture is downstream of politics and economics. That now people are beginning to realise that he's right, and a lot of what I've been doing is really fighting against that influence of academics and intellectuals in art departments just pushing this on artists, and without people really being aware of the theories that behind it and where it comes from. So great, thank you. So now,
all right, I'd entered the rabbit hole about this whole intellectual world that can be explored that touches film via Marshall McLuhan, and I wanted to study it in depth. And I had sort of thought that media studies departments were going to be a terrible place to do that, and so Marshall McLuhan kind of considered himself a linguist. So I wanted to lean into linguistics. So I applied to various programs. And a long story short, like I didn't choose any of them. And some of them didn't choose me. I visited Berkeley's campus, which is a very interesting linguistics program, and felt supernaturally sure I was going to go to Berkeley, and then didn't get in because why should I? I didn't have a linguistics bachelor degree or any reason to believe I should get into Berkeley. It was just a sense. And I accepted. I was going to accept a master's degree at like Case Western in Cleveland, which had been pretty different. But somebody from the Act One program on the board, Ron Austin, told me about this school in Berkeley, Dominican School of Philosophy and Theology, which is this kind of in Berkeley, California, of all places, this extremely conservative Catholic Dominican-run institution where you could just really get as much Aquinas and Aristotle as you could possibly want. And so they let me write my master's thesis on McLuhan, and I cross-registered at Berkeley and took more classes on cultural anthropology and discourse analysis, which was great tools. And so I caught the academic bug. I thought I was going to try and pursue more teaching because I really enjoyed teaching those classes. Well, lo and behold, I fell in love with a professor, not one of my professors, but somebody else in the philosophy world. And and I didn't think I was going to be in the film business anymore, but she introduced me to an entrepreneur who was setting up a company that would develop scripts outside the Hollywood system and try and sell them back to the Hollywood system. And that company was the Story Locker. I really admired the Story Locker's vision. And, so you could devote a totally separate podcast to like the trials and tribulations of the Story Locker and where we are now, still alive. But the room that you're living in right now, the Story Locker had a part in that.
What I would like to talk a little bit about how you and I met and the room where I'm living in, so to speak, St. Jerome, because I'll just tell you the story as to how I came to meet you. So I wanted to move to the East Bay here. My brother's in the area, and so I had various reasons for wanting to come to the area and was looking for somewhere to live. And someone said, oh, you should contact Caleb Brown. He's got a place with rooms, and you might fit in. And then we spoke on Skype. I don't think I was in Chicago at that time.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
What I remember most is you were interested in the re-evangelization of culture, and that you thought Berkeley, California was going to be the sort of most strategically effective place to do that. Okay. And that was very intriguing to me, and I'm still rooting for that. And yeah.
Okay. Well, we're still sort of beavering away, but what you did was that when you were at the DSPT, you lived in student accommodation, which was an old convent, St. Jerome's Convent, and enjoyed the community aspect of living.
Very much, yeah.
And decided when you joined Storylog, I want to create that atmosphere where people are working together and living together somehow.
Yeah, living together, working on something related to one another, and breaking bread on a weekly basis. It was a really rich formula for getting close and creating a bond. And so, when the convent became available and the Story Locker picked up the lease, it was a bunch of screenwriters and their families living there, trying to make the original vision work. And slowly we got the Story Locker's portfolio got a little stranger, like online courses and video essays and consulting services, and gradually added people to the ranks that were had just kind of an interesting sprawling kaleidoscope of activities related to culture making.
Well, and what's happened is that everybody who is here, I mean, we're still here now. You're over at Princeton with Laura and your family, but nevertheless, the connection is still there. Everybody in this place is a Christian, in some way, broadly speaking, connected to this broader mission, I would say, of the culture, and they're interested in discussing and participating in some way. Some people come because you feel that they fit the mix of the people here, and the community's got to succeed, so that people don't always have an obvious interest. But what I would say is that as a result of this mix of people, you and I have met, we've collaborated through Pontifex, we're talking now. For example, many people who listen to this podcast will know Charlie Deist. I met Charlie because you knew him.
If you watch the video essay, you'll see him credited on The Incredibles. Okay.
And so not only was he working on that, he and I started to discuss things. And so we've been working together on a whole host of different things that we talk about on these podcasts. And so, and we still meet once a week. We have a meal together. The rest of the time, we're sort of doing our own thing. But I just had an hour and a half conversation with Tom because we bumped into each other at the kitchen, and we delved into politics. At a certain point, we thought, well, maybe we should stop this now, But but that's still happening, and in the one of the large spaces, we watched your film yesterday. So
there's this amazing chapel in the convent, and like a good evangelical born person, I took a chapel and I turned it in, put in a big screen and a surround sound system.
Well, it's a sort of, it's a two-sided coin, because there's several Catholics there. Yeah, I should explain that you went to this Catholic college. I would describe you as Protestant with Catholic sensibilities, and you and me. I think you're on your way, but you just don't know it yet. But anyway, but so what you face one way, and there is this large screen which you press something and it comes down. So we effectively got a movie theater in this place. But then you face the other way, the screen goes up, you turn around, and we have the altar there, which is now permanently set up it's consecrated, so there's no sacrilege going on. But nevertheless, we use that as a focus for prayer. Some of you will be aware that we regularly sing Vespers in that chapel. You know, I put some of them out on Facebook videos. We're now meeting again, by the way, Mondays, and people are coming in. So there is those aspects of community life are just gradually developing and happen within the place. So that's St. Jerome's. So what I would ask you before we get back to the one question is, what's next? Is there anything in the pipeline? What I'd like to do is just ask you if you've got any thoughts on how this study contributed to of philosophy and theology, very rigorous study at this Dominican school, contributed to, for example, what you just did, your approach to screenplay writing, and then also just talk a little bit about your general philosophy of how you approach screenplay writing as a Christian, trying to make inroads into popular culture, not just be a niche player, for a selective Christian market.
Yeah, gosh, there's a lot in there and a lot to say, but yeah, I forget what the first question is already, but as a writer who's a Christian, I feel like I should be judged in the same way that like somebody who's writing for NBC or HBO or Warner Brothers should be judged. Is like, do I believe this?
Yeah.
There's some emotional truth here, and do I care? That's the primary sin in entertainment, is that people don't care, or they know that you're lying to them emotionally. Like, those are the sins. Where the Christian part comes in for me is, what do I consider interesting? What sort of insights do I find just really sort of haunt me? What aspects of our culture or a different culture stand out? So yeah, my sort of aha moment was after learning how to watch movies from this USC adjunct professor. I took up a study of WALL-E, a movie that I didn't really like all that much from Pixar, and just learned not only was my reading of the movie really shallow, but this was probably the best example of what a Christian ought to be making in Hollywood. In fact, like the writer-director Andrew Stanton said, like, that the movie is about how, in order for us to love like Christ calls us to love, we have to overcome our automatic programming, and that theme is seen in a beautiful unity throughout the entire story. And from that point on, I stopped obsessing about creating a separate, safe, pure Christian world of entertainment, and set about trying to figure out, all right, how can we, like, maybe Hollywood doesn't need to be saved. And maybe in some ways our own perceptions, we need different eyes and different ears. But so the task of, like, when I set it down to write a script, I'm really looking for something that bothers me a lot, like something that just doesn't quite go together. A moral decision that is not all that clear cut, or something that I'm extremely afraid of, but would like to explore in story form. Those are kind of the things that power writing something. So, like, what's next for me? Through the Script Doctor work that I've been doing, I'm getting more opportunities to contribute to projects that are actually sort of on this border of Christian market, and with the hopes of breaking out to something larger. And there's some neat historical projects. One set in Oakland in the 60s.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, so if there's any sort of comment there, there's also one on the back burner about arranged marriages in Hindu communities. I just saw something that was of universal value to the idea of arranged marriage. Not that I'm trying to tell people to have arranged marriages. It's just like when you really see it up close, the fact that a marriage is more secure under commitment rather than like passion is something that I believe in strongly. So anyhow, it really is sort of about cultivating a taste that is leavened with things that I learned in grad school. One thing I took away from grad school was having a very sharp sort of logical approach to arguments that are being made. And that served me very well, meticulously pulling things apart. Another thing that served me well was the second part of the Summa Theologica. It's just this really intricate vocabulary of moral, of vices and virtues, and how they, how some verses tip into vices and vice versa. It's I think the most elaborate and true to human experience description of the moral life that there is. And so whenever I'm dissecting a film or I'm writing one, I'm always looking for some very precise way to describe the theme of what's being said. And I pretty much every time I'll reach into second part of the Summa Theologica and look for some term that just captures what I'm going for.
Okay. Yes, I've noticed that that you focus on so not so much a full Christian narrative within a film, but parts of it, and very often a sort of moral message that comes through, and also how that appeals, why that touches our hearts. That's the thing. It's not just the content, but it's how that is communicated and why, as you put it, why we care, which is the skill of the director. So great. I think then we'll just finish. That's terrific, Caleb. So great to talk to you. Good luck.
Really fun to talk with you, David. Really great to see you as well.
Yeah. So for those who want to watch the film, Blue Ridge at voodoo.com, screenplay co-written by Caleb. Thoroughly recommended. And till the next movie and the next podcast with you, goodbye. Great to talk to you.
All right, take care, David.
Okay, God bless you. You've been listening to the Way of Beauty podcast, conversations on Catholic faith and culture. If you enjoyed this episode, then please give us a 5-star review on iTunes. This will help others to find it too. Also, if you're interested in delving more deeply into the material that we discuss, you can do a course at the Pontifex University website. That's pontifex.university.